So the only ones who got totally canned from this movie were the 7 dwarf people. And on top of it all, to add insult to injury, they made one of the 7 bandits a real dwarf person. Only they couldn't admit it was a real dwarf, so they couldn't say that because that would cause offense in the first place. So the real dwarf was a bandit who just looked like a real dwarf, moved like a real dwarf, but nobody can call him a real dwarf or you get very upset. He was a bandit, not a dwarf, not a bandit dwarf, and not a dwarf bandit. Just a bandit who looked like a dwarf and who was included because of inclusiveness, and they needed a dwarf as a bandit who would be a dwarf that they couldn't admit was an actual dwarf. So now the real dwarfs were represented as long as nobody admitted it was a real dwarf, but only a fake dwarf who was a real bandit. So the real dwarf was a fake dwarf who only looked like a real dwarf but was a bandit, but the fake CGI dwarves could now be considered real dwarfs since they were actually really fake dwarfs. In other words, Disney had gotten so woke and so confused that they forgot what it was they were trying to be woken up from. And the result was, you guessed it, a mess. Now, if it was inclusivity that they were really after, they already had a dwarf named Grumpy. They could have at least had a dwarf named Trumpy. And the good thing about that is the dwarf Trumpy could have come in and fired their production budget, the screenwriter, the director, fired all the staff, eliminate the woke propaganda department, and the movie would have turned out a lot better than it did. They could have even had Trumpy saying, "We're going to make Snow White great again. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to do a terrific job of waking her up, getting her back on her feet like you wouldn't believe." Not like Sleepy Joe. You can't wake him up. You ever notice that? Very sad what's happened to Sleepy Joe. And even that would have turned out better than this movie.